Hello, and welcome to the Career Change Diaries podcast with me, Alice Stapleton. And today I'm delighted to be chatting to a previous client who is Shelby Fields. Hi, Shelby, how are you?
Hi, I'm great, thanks.
Thank you very much for joining me. So, today we're going to hear from Shelby, whose career has seen her move between different sectors, different work models, and even different continents. So, looking to hear more about that. She's led teams, she's managed projects, and built operations in everything from humanitarian charities and Big Four consulting, right through to creative startups and small wellness businesses. And she now heads the data and tech function at a research and development funding agency. And Shelby's story is all about navigating change with purpose. So great intro. Thank you for that. Really helpful summary. So we started working together in 2022, which we were saying has flown
A
by.
long
Can't
time
believe it's
ago.
been nearly 3 years. So I suppose, first of all, talk me through where your career had got to at that point that we first met.
Yeah, so when I started the world of work, I had really wanted to be in the humanitarian sector. Everything I'd studied at university, my master's degree, were all preparing me to go into working for charities. I wanted to work on either humanitarian projects or development projects. And I did have a job at the start of my career that focused on that, but I decided to make a career change and I had shifted into consulting. And so I spent about 6 years when we met in professional services doing different types of work. And I was just feeling a little bit disillusioned by working for really large companies. You know, we're talking about hundreds of thousands of employees. Working on things that focused on sales, that focused on business development, which I never felt very connected to. And then also working in big organizations that I just wasn't connected to the overall mission and purpose, which had been really important to me at the start of my career. And so I reached out to you because I knew I was going to want to make a shift. I had tried to make some shifts before, but it hadn't felt like I landed where I wanted to. I didn't feel like I was being very authentic in my work. And so I thought, okay, before I make the next leap, let me work with someone to see if I can find a better answer about what to do next or connect more
Mm.
to where I'm trying to head. And so I think I'd been in my job at the time for about 6 or 7 months, and I knew I might only want to stay there for another year or so. And so we connected in order to just help me think through what that jump might look like.
Yeah. And just to backtrack a little bit, why the shift away from charity work and humanitarian
Yeah.
work?
Well, there were a couple of things. I think I had been very intellectually interested in that work. You know, that's what I did my degrees in, and I found the studying and academic side of some of the political science, sociology, etc., to be really interesting. The work is different from when you're studying it.
Mm.
And there were certain trade-offs that I found I just didn't really want to make. So um, in order to work in the humanitarian sector, often you want to go off and do field work. I was here in the UK, I had a relationship here, and after working in that sector for a while, I decided I didn't want to go be based in the field. I also was struggling financially. You know, working in the charity sector can be challenging, especially if you're living somewhere like London. So that wasn't really a
Mm.
trade off that I had thought through as a student. And then also, you know, I was feeling a little bit um, like some of the skills I turned out having when I was working, I wanted to explore more. So I found I had quite a good commercial sense and good like business type skills, but had never really explored that at all. So I thought that consulting might be a good learning ground to help me retrain something I hadn't really studied at all, which it turned out to be true. You know, I worked for quite a while. It felt like doing an MBA almost without needing to go back to school. So I made that leap. That said, I never really thought that that was what I was going to do forever. I sort of thought, let me go into consulting, work in that kind of environment for maybe 5 to 7 years. And then at the time, I thought maybe I'd go back to working in an NGO setting or something. I wasn't really sure. But yes, that was my first big career shift.
Yeah. Well, that must have felt quite strange in itself, no? Going from, I suppose, the charity world to quite big corporate world.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it really did. You're learning a totally different language of how you're speaking about things, different motivations. I had never had to worry about profit or sales or how much revenue we were making. It was a different connection to purpose. Previously, I'd had these very like large meta level altruistic purposes that I was attached to. And I didn't feel that in the corporate world. Um, yeah, so it was a big transition. I think I was prepared for that. I knew it would be big. I knew I would have a real learning curve, but because I was making the jump wanting to learn, it wasn't quite as daunting as maybe it could have been. And I found my way into a really amazing team and quite a unique job in consulting that has really shaped the rest of my career. So that was a really positive thing.
And can you remember how that came around? That
The job that I
opportunity?
wound up in.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, so when I was leaving the charity that I worked for, I did a bunch of networking and someone introduced me to Deloitte, which is my former employer, um, where they were needing to set up a crisis management function, which felt like kind of a good fit for some of the skills since I had been working on some crisis projects previously.
Mm.
And so I found my way into this business unit where then we wound up not having crisis management work. So I was a little bit at an odd end or a loose end. And I was working on projects that had nothing to do with my skill set, nothing to do with my background. And I was thinking, okay, what did I make this leap for? Is this the right place? And luckily, a colleague joined the firm around the same time, and he wanted to set up an intelligence services center. And he needed a right hand who knew the firm. I mean, I had only been at the firm for about 6 months, but knew the firm better than him at that stage, and had some of the operational skills that I had. And so our partners paired us together and said, "Can you two just go see if you can build this thing?" And that's what we did. We spent 5 years building what still is an existing business unit at Deloitte. It's called the Intelligence Services Center. And he was very much the visionary member of the team. He was out building relationships, driving the vision of what this business unit would be. And I was the one figuring out how to do it. So building out the team, the structure, the operations. And that's where I kind of fell in love with business building or team building, um, drawing on some of my more operational skills, which I had tapped into in the humanitarian sector. So it was truly happenstance that we both happened to be in the firm at the same time in that business unit. But it was an incredible partnership. We still have a very close relationship now. And had I not done that, I mean, I think my career would have gone in a very different direction.
Yeah, that's funny how these things happen, isn't it?
Yeah.
So, actually, just based on what you've said, so there was another role
Yeah.
in there.
So I left Deloitte. I had a year off and because I wanted to make a change. And then I wound up getting another job in another professional services firm. And that was the one that was meant to be a year. And it wound up being about a year and a half, but it was this false start because I had left Deloitte wanting to get out of that sector and then wound up in another professional services firm. So, so that was what really led me to you because I was like, well, I don't want to do this again. I don't want to go just into another job that's similar.
Around the time that you were looking for a coach, can you remember some of the niggles or the challenges, or maybe even some of the fears and doubts that you had that were holding you back from figuring out what you wanted by yourself?
Yeah, I think when I had made that shift from the humanitarian sector to consulting, I was really clear about what I was trying to get out of my next step. And I was okay with the idea that I didn't think it was going to be permanent, that it was going to be a learning ground and something that I was using to get really great experience for the next thing. But I had spent 5 years at Deloitte, and then I moved on and worked for another professional services firm for another year or so when I found you, and was just feeling like, well, I know that this isn't really what I want to be doing long term, but I actually don't know what it is. I don't have a clear vision now. I can just feel that it doesn't really fit. And I think some of what didn't fit, as I maybe mentioned before, was the commercial side. As I was getting more senior in these organizations, uh, I was winding up being more and more sales focused, more focused on business development, which is something I can do, but it doesn't feel really aligned for me. It's not the way I like to use my skills. I really like the operational side. So I knew I didn't want to keep being in sales oriented roles, which, especially in a consulting firm, the more senior you are, that is what your role is about. I also knew I didn't want to be somewhere that was as large, but I couldn't put a definition around what it was that I wanted to do. And that feeling lost or feeling confused about the next step was what I really wanted help on, because I knew I wanted to make a step, but I couldn't put my finger on what it was that I was heading towards.
Yeah. So lots of feelings, lots of inklings, lots of
Yeah.
intuition and sort of half baked thoughts maybe on
Yeah,
what wasn't working. But
exactly.
as you've described, that doesn't always immediately translate into what would work.
Yeah.
Sometimes we sort of get stuck with the first half of that thinking. Um, all right, and then through the coaching, can you remember some of the maybe like the pivotal moments, or maybe key moments, or key insights that you had that started that process of, oh, okay, well, I think this is roughly what I want to do next?
Yeah, there were several things. So one reason I reached out to you as a coach as opposed to someone else was I really liked your emphasis on not just looking at the job, looking at how that job fits into the life that you want, or the overarching value set that you have, rather than just what role do you want to do
Mm.
next. Working in an environment like a consulting firm is very high stress. It can be very consuming. And I felt like I didn't have the balance in my life that I really wanted. So I knew that whatever I wanted to do next needed to have more balance. And so I didn't want to just look at the job. I didn't just want to say, what can I do as a role? I wanted to understand, you know, how that work could help facilitate the life that I wanted. So that was one thing that really drew me to you. And so as we were going through the exercises, I really liked, um, when we were looking at values, when we were looking at, um, I think there was this exercise, a wheel exercise, where it was like, how much energy or how well do you feel you're doing in different areas of your life, and how can you maybe bring more balance to that? And so for me, that helped really clarify in my mind, maybe not so much what the role was that I wanted to go towards, but definitely what life I wanted to be building towards, and what the job should facilitate. So I think that was really helpful because it helped me weigh up the pros and cons of different kinds of opportunities I was looking at. And it was also helpful because I think there was something in me. I really wanted to do something drastic. Like, okay, I'm no longer working for a big corporate. I'm now running a yoga studio or something. Um, and some of what came out of the coaching was actually my skills, the things that I do in my work. I do really enjoy. I'm good at.
Mm.
I enjoy team leadership. I enjoy kind of bringing order to chaos. Building businesses, these things. So I didn't need to do something totally different from what I was doing. I just needed to find my way into a different environment, and make sure that I was prioritizing certain things that were really important to me. And so that helped me feel a little bit more confident that I didn't need to make such a big leap, that it didn't need to be this real dichotomy in my life where I was going one direction and now I was going another, but that it could be more of a winding path.
Yeah. Well, I imagine that was a really helpful process just to sit through because yeah, I think when we're in a job, we're not enjoying it. You know, it's been like I think I've said this before, it's been like a relationship. You know, if that relationship ends, then there tends to be like the rebound relationship where you're
Yeah.
like, oh, I'm going to go complete opposite end of the spectrum and do something completely different. But yeah, as you say, it doesn't always have to be that way, or
No.
need to be that way. Yeah, I do remember with you, yeah, just real strengths around that operational
Hmm.
side, the project management side, and yeah, as you say, just this reflection that the sort of core skills that you were using, you really enjoyed
Yeah.
using, and it was clear that they were real, almost superpowers of
Hmm.
yours.
Yeah.
It was just kind of working out where in the world you wanted to use them. Definitely.
Yeah.
Um, okay. So then, can you remember what then helped you decide what environment to then take all that into?
Well, I mean, I'm not sure I've wholly figured that out. I think
Yeah.
some of what has happened is I've given myself more permission to explore different environments and kind of move into different spaces. So I think as we talked about, I was raised in a family of people with vocations, very clear vocations, speech therapist, teacher, nurse, minister. These people who I was surrounded by had very long careers in one kind of thing. And I was always very envious of that. Something that the coaching helped with and some of the past couple of years have helped with is acknowledging that I will probably continue to shift and change and be in different spaces. So after we finished our coaching, or like right around the time we were wrapping up, I was actually made redundant from the job that I was in the second professional services firm. And it was a real blessing actually, because it gave me the freedom to say, okay, well, I don't need to decide to take this leap. I am going to take this leap. I have
You
to.
have to, yeah, yeah.
And some financial buffer to help with that as well as part of my severance package. And so I used that to move back to the US after living in London for 12 years. And that was obviously, I'm back in London now, but it was an exploration of whether or not I might want to move back to where I'm from. And in doing so, I decided to take a bunch of freelance projects, and they were almost like the shift projects that you talk about in your coaching,
Mm.
where with each of these freelance projects, I was exploring different industries, businesses, ways of working. So I was the COO of a yoga brand for a couple of years. I'm still involved with them, giving them some financial and commercial advice and strategic advice. I helped co-found a music supervision company with someone who's very well established in the music business, but he needed someone to help him on the operational side to set up this separate business to the music management company he runs. I worked with coaches, I worked with a marketing firm. So I was really testing out things in like the creative and wellness spaces, which were things that I was really interested in, especially when I
Mm.
was working in the corporate consulting world. But then when I came back to London, it was very clear to me I didn't really want to be on my own anymore. I love working with teams. I love being embedded in an organization. So again, that was another kind of test point for me that while I could use my skills on my own to find work, it wasn't the kind of environment I wanted to be working by myself. And so I then, through networking, found my way to my current role, which is ARIA. It's the Advanced Research and Invention Agency. It's a scientific research and development funding organization, which I never would have really thought I would wind up in science. I don't have a scientific background, but the role was a really good fit. It has a big purpose and mission, which was a good fit. And it was focusing on team building and setting up a function, which was also a good fit. So I think this whole exploration helped me be more curious about what environments might work for me. And yeah, what factors I might want to prioritize, like mission or team building.
Oh, interesting. So you said that came around through networking as well.
Well, I had to interview for the role and all of these things, but I wouldn't have come across that organization if I hadn't gone out to lunch with someone I'd been interviewed or I had been introduced to through my network. And she said, you know where I think you could really fit in is this organization. And it's one that had I come across it on LinkedIn, I might have passed it by because, as I said, it's a scientific research
Mm.
organization. I don't have a background in science. It's not something that would have leapt out at me. But the more I dug into the work that they do, the mission that they have, it's an incredibly inspiring place. And it really has kind of the pace and culture of a startup, even though it's government funded. And so that works environment wise for me as well. So, had I not had this networking lunch where someone said, I know your skills, I know what you're interested in, I think you would be a good fit here, I would have probably passed that by. And so now that's where I'm working. Networking has been very helpful for me along the way for these kinds of nudges in the right direction.
Yeah, no, it sounds it. Well, and is that how? So you working for the yoga studio and those other organizations, was that all you kind of getting out there and building relationships as well?
Yeah, also through networks. The yoga one was the first one. It was someone who I've known for years. Uh, I've practiced with her, been on her retreats, all of these things. And she said to me, oh, I know you're moving. We need some administrative help. Could you maybe help us while you're in this process? And, it could be beneficial for both of us. And then when I came in, I said, okay, well, I could do more for you than some administrative stuff. So it started there. And it was actually through connections I made through that job or that piece of work that I found other pieces of work because people said, well, we want the help that you're providing to this yoga brand for our own organization. So then I was able to build off of that rather than doing real direct marketing or needing to do hard sells. It was a lot of word of mouth of people
Mm.
saying, this is the kind of help we need. Can you come help us?
Yeah. Um, and just to go back to something you said earlier, so even though you're, supporting founders, being a co-founder, obviously quite a pivotal part of a team, albeit
Mhm.
small, what was it that still felt sort of insular?
Mm, yeah, it's a good question. So when I talk about team, I've found my way into team leadership roles where, I'm kind of guiding a team, and I, in particular, have people who are, reporting to me who I can really work with and coach. It's something that I really enjoy doing is developing team members. And so it's not just the management side, it's also the people leadership side. And so in these roles where I was more of an advisor, I was doing some, I guess, peer coaching. I was coaching founders, I was supporting them. Um, but it was a more limited scope. And also, they were really small organizations, so they're not big enough to have me on full time. And so, being really embedded in one organization and the culture there wasn't an option. I had to have lots of different things going. And so I always felt like I had my attention split between different places. And that made it feel lonelier than being part of one organization for me.
Mm. Oh, interesting. Because yeah, I've worked with a couple of consultants who have obviously one of their options has been, do I want to do this as a freelancer?
Mm,
So yeah, it's interesting just to sort of hear the experiences of it. It must have been quite rewarding seeing them implement your suggestions and processes and seeing the business grow and be
yeah.
more effective as a result.
Yeah, I think there's something about having a very swift and direct impact. Working in the really large companies that I worked in, I often felt many steps removed from whatever the end impact was, just because you're working in such a big organization. Your clients are maybe not your team's clients, they're someone else's clients. So I wasn't working very closely with whoever was receiving the end results of my work. Whereas working with these smaller teams, we made a decision, the next day something different was happening and the business was growing. And that felt very rewarding and definitely helped me understand that I didn't want to go to such a large environment, even if I wanted to be somewhere bigger. And that it is really helpful for me to be working on things that feel quite tangible. So yeah,
Yeah.
whether that's running events or launching an organization.
Yeah, I do hear that quite a lot from people. Yeah, they want to see the product of their work because it's not particularly motivating when you're so far, as you say, so far removed from the actual implementation of what you're working on. And were you working in the US when you went back for a bit, or were you working remotely for UK clients?
Well, both. So I was in the US for about 15 months. And during that time, I was working, I wouldn't say I was working full time. I was working quite a bit on different clients. So at any given time, I would have between 1 and 4 clients, I think was the maximum of my kind of portfolio. Most of them were here in the UK because this was where I had had my entire career. It's where I had both my business and social networks. And this was where the yoga business was that I met so many other clients through. But I did have the music supervision company was Denver based, which was one of the locations that I was living in the US. So I did have some work there. But most of it was here, which was also a factor in me coming back. I just realized what strong communities I had here. That especially if I was going to continue doing any freelance work would be important, but also for finding my way into the next thing.
Yeah, well, yeah, I was going to say, did you sort of notice any differences from working with UK clients versus American clients?
Yeah, well, I've worked with American teams before. My entire professional life has been outside of the US. So even though I'm American by birth and by part of my education, I've always worked overseas. And so there's a lot about my working culture that isn't naturally very American because I've been trained up in mainly in the UK. So in the past, when I've worked with American teams, I've always noticed the difference there. And it was something I was nervous about going back to the US. I was nervous about getting a job in a larger company and working in kind of the pace and expectations around how much time you spent, how much holiday you had, that sort of work-life balance concept that, from what I've witnessed, is just very different in the US from
Right.
even London, where we're still probably faster paced than a lot of our European counterparts. So that was something. There's also just a different style and communication. American culture can be just much more direct, um, more more sales focused, much bigger. The US market is huge, and so what companies are able to do tends to be on much bigger and grander scales sometimes. So yeah, there are a lot of differences, and it was something I was very aware of if I had gotten a full-time role there, which I wound up not doing because I came back.
Yeah. Well, yeah, it doesn't sound particularly aligned with what you
No,
realised you wanted from a career,
no,
a better balance and team working, that sort of thing.
yeah.
Um, okay, and so you move back to the UK. The company that you're working for now, what size is that then?
We're about 90 people.
Okay,
So
so
yeah,
how
so
do you
much more
find the size?
manageable.
Right.
I
Okay.
really like it. I feel like I know who everyone is. I interact with everyone. We have a very large mission, and as an organization, we work with hundreds of other companies, researchers, etc. So we have a much bigger ecosystem. So it doesn't feel small in the sense of being like limited or a small scope, but the core team itself is smaller, which I think one of my real strengths in a work setting is relationship building. And so I feel like in a very short amount of time, I've been able to go in, build relationships across the organization, which in a much larger organization would take longer to even find your way to the right people. And so it's only been a couple of months, and I already feel very at home there in a way that in some of these larger companies has taken me maybe 6 months to figure out. So it's been a real difference, at
Yeah.
least for me.
Yeah. Very positive.
Yeah.
And where do you see your career going from here, do you think?
Well, I don't really know. I think I've spent a lot of time trying to find real clarity. It's like I've wanted to have that silver bullet of this is the job. As I said, coming from this background of being surrounded by people with vocations, where whether they were teaching in different places or doing different things, I always thought, wow, they can say they're a teacher and they know who they are professionally. I don't think I'll have that. And I think I'm coming to terms with that it's going to be about finding what the next great location is or environment or next big project. But I feel much more confident in what some of my superpowers are and some of my skill sets. So when it's time to move on from this role in this organization, I think it will be easier to then feel really ready for the next thing without feeling like I need to make a big leap or change or wholly reinvent who I am, which I definitely did not feel that a couple of years ago. As I said, I felt like I needed to come up with a very different archetype of what my career needed to be.
Yeah, that's so interesting. So, because of the backgrounds of the people that you've sort of grown up with, it sounds like you were looking for a way to, identify yourself
Yeah,
almost, trying to
yeah,
look for, as you say, this sort of silver bullet of, oh, okay, well, this is who I am. This is what I'm going to do
yeah.
for
If
the
I
for
could
the
just
rest of my
say
life.
I'm this, then I'll know I'll have this security in my career of who I am. Which I don't think, even if you are in a vocation, there's still lots of uncertainty or questions, or you can be in places you don't like, or you can make changes. But I think for a long time, I was just really hoping to have a neat and tidy box around what I called myself in work.
Yeah. Yeah, I think as humans we have this desire for neat and tidy boxes for sure.
Yes.
We
Yes.
love we love a box, we love a label, we love a kind of, yeah, this is who I am. And it sort of seems to give us, as you say, this perceived security
Yeah.
of some sort. And can you remember when we were working together how much of a thing security was for you? Was
Yes.
it like a thing?
It's always been very important to me. Well, no. It has I've always had the perception that it's really important to me. So I think um, something we talked a lot about was this balance between stability and security, that they're actually two separate things. And that I wanted to find a way to be secure in myself. So my skills, knowing that I could get work, knowing where I was heading, but actually stability, I have constantly changed. Stability hasn't really been a thing for me. I've moved country multiple times. Before I lived in London, I lived in South Korea and Denmark. I've changed industries multiple times. I've changed the kinds of roles and trajectories I think I'm on. So I clearly don't have a real problem making some big changes or taking big risks. Um, but I was really trying to hold on to that like that's something that I needed and was failing at rather than seeing it as I suppose a strength or just something that allowed me to follow my interests. And yeah, it's something I'm still working on. I still would like more stability perhaps, but I'm trying to settle just for security, knowing that I've found my way into lots of different roles along the way. It doesn't need to have a neat and tidy box as we're talking about,
Mm,
which would be the
mm,
stability box.
yeah. Well, then being a freelancer, how did that sit with you day to day? Were you kind of lying awake at night, or was it actually all right?
It was fine for the time period that that's what I was doing it for. I think long term, I would find that very difficult. It was one reason I found my way into this role,
Mm.
a single role. Um, some of it is, as I said, I didn't want to do sales and business development. And no matter what you're doing as a freelancer, you are doing sales and business development. You have to find your
Yeah.
next job and you're selling yourself. You're not even selling a product or a company, you're selling you. And that is just something I don't want to spend my time doing. I hadn't wanted to do it in a big company. I don't really want to do it for myself. So that's one of the bigger things that I struggled with as a freelancer. I was getting work coming to me, which was great, but I knew that that wouldn't always be the case. Um, and also, yeah, financially, I didn't want to take some of the contracts that I knew I could probably go find that would be very well paid, but would be in environments that I didn't have any interest working in, or maybe projects I wouldn't want to work on. But when you're working for small businesses, often there isn't the budget to be able to pay you really high consulting fees. And so it was making freelancing financially challenging as well, which definitely was chipping away at the feeling of stability and security.
Yeah, double whammy. Well, yeah, I mean, great to have learned all of that. I
Yeah,
suppose, as you said, they were sort of shift projects and experiments in a way, and so was the move back to the US just to sort of
yeah.
see how that all felt and make decisions, and it's led you to where you are now. So it sounds like, although you don't sort of know what is next, you just sound like you're more comfortable with the not knowing.
Yeah, I think that's a good assessment of it. You know, I seem to really be drawn to roles which are around setting up teams, business units, businesses, um, being involved in projects at times of big change. So going from maybe being a startup into trying to scale and be more stable. So working around that time period, team leadership, being in places that have a big purpose. And so I think all of those things give me the blueprints or the criteria for which to look for future roles. Um, and clearly there are jobs that require that because I keep finding them. And so now it's a bit clearer to me what I will continue to look for. But the actual organization or project or even job title will probably continue to change. I mean, the team I'm leading right now, I'm leading the head I'm leading the data and tech function for this organization. I'm not a deep tech expert. That's not my core competency historically. But what the role has needed has been someone to help bring the team together, define what we're doing, set a strategy, connect with the organization. And those are things that I have a strong skill set in. And so if I had gone out looking for a job title, I wouldn't have plugged in head of data and tech, just like I wouldn't have looked at a
No.
scientific organization. So that's one reason it's hard for me to say, here's what's next, because if I put a title on it, I probably very easily could bypass roles that would actually be a good fit for me.
Mm. Yeah, I love that because I think sometimes we do cling on to, okay, well, what's my job title?
Yeah.
What is it that I'm searching for? Um, and as you say, that can limit opportunities, and helpful to kind of leave keep an open mind.
Mm.
Well, and it sounds like it was helpful that people in your network know you.
Yeah.
They know what your skill set are, and they're able to sort of point you in the right direction.
Yeah.
Well, that's quite exciting in a way, that
Yeah.
it's just where it goes next, and it could be a very different industry. A lot of people worry about changing industry, and
Hmm.
obviously you've done it several times.
Yeah.
What would you say are maybe one or two things that people might need to think about, if anything, in order to facilitate a change in industry?
Yeah. Yeah, I don't think I ever set out thinking that I would change industry a lot. And so I've had to learn things along the way, just as I've gone through. I mean, one is a network is really important. And I don't mean networking in the sense of going and mingling at random events. I mean, I'm sure that can help, but a network of people who understand you, what you're looking for, and can help point you in the right direction. Because organizations now don't follow the same blueprints, job titles don't follow the same blueprints. So you may not even know what you're looking for. And it's been really helpful to talk to my network and say, here's what I'm looking for, and giving kind of the high level concept. And they say, okay, you should look in this team, or you should look for jobs that are called this. That's been a really important steer. So my networking has helped me understand how to even look for something in a new industry.
Mm.
I think another thing that's helpful to know is about like the different language between different industries. So we don't all speak the same language. I mean, every organization has its own lexicon of what they call things or what the culture is. And so just preparing to need to learn a new language somewhere and then having the humility to just go, oh, I didn't know it was called that, or I didn't know that that was really important here. Great, let me learn. And being really open to that can help you fit in quite quickly. Um, and then something else that's been helpful for me, it hasn't always been easy, is learning how to not know everything.
Mm.
So you get
Mm.
into a new organization, especially when you're in a new industry, and you might be talking to people who know a lot more about their subject matter expertise than you do. And that's okay because you have your own expertise. So that was something working in Deloitte really taught me. I could sit down with the head of private equity. I don't know much about private equity, and I could talk to them about it. I didn't need to be an expert in private equity because I was an expert in what my team was doing, and that was okay. And so I didn't need to try to prove myself or be able to speak at the same level as that person. I just needed to know what I was there to talk about and what I was there to do. So building that confidence to have conversations where you don't always understand everything has been super important when moving industries for me.
Yeah. Yeah, that's very good insight too. Well, as you say, it's just sort of backing yourself, knowing that you have your skill set, and it's okay to be having conversations with people who have a
Yeah.
different skill set
Yeah.
and a different bag of knowledge and information, and not to feel inferior.
Yeah.
I'm reading this book, The Courage to be Disliked. Have you
Okay. I
heard of
haven't. No,
that?
I haven't.
Um, and it sort of talks about how all the issues, well, it actually says all the issues that we face tend to be relationship
Mm,
problems.
yeah.
And that one of the key factors is that we feel inferior, and that it just
Mm,
sort of spirals and creates all these weird dynamics and issues that don't need to be there. So what you said there has just made me thought, well, yeah, just to sort of back yourself that you're not inferior just because you're new and you don't know
no.
stuff. You come with skills and experience and information and knowledge, and you're talking to somebody who has that but in a different space, and
Yeah.
be a sponge and learn and
Yeah.
see yourself as an equal human being.
Yeah. I think another point on that is the relationships, what you're calling out. Like building relationships can it can make all the difference. And so often, especially in business environments where sometimes we're focused on, the return on investment or the commercial aspects of what we're doing. Um, Relationships can feel like this sort of intangible thing that you don't know what you're going to get out of it, but getting into an organization and just working on that relationship building very quickly and connecting with people, that has been so helpful to me. And has really helped me then when I've tried to move on as well. It's people saying, okay, it's sad that you're leaving the charity sector, but let me introduce you to someone in consulting. That's where the power of networking comes from. But then in an organization as well, it's people can help you find your feet really quickly, that if you're attempting to do it on your own, it will take much longer, it will be much harder. And so just like being vulnerable in that way to going like, I'm here, I want to connect with people and build these relationships has been really helpful as well.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I think vulnerable is a good word. Transparent, authentic, just almost putting your hands up and
Yeah.
saying, yeah, I'm new, help,
Yeah.
and asking for help. I think we underestimate how helpful and supportive people are in those situations, for sure. Yeah, and to see it as a challenge and an exciting one when,
Yeah.
just starting somewhere new and learning everything for the first time sometimes. Um, okay. So having been through your whole sort of story up to now, what are you noticing about that story as you recollect it?
Well, as I said, I think I had this illusion that stability and consistency was really important to me at the start of my career. And where I'm at now, it is just, it's not a theme at all. Change has been a theme. I know that that sounds like a cliche. Um, but for me in my career, it has been a real theme, and that I've really followed what feels interesting to me at the time, not just out of restlessness, but also just wanting to move towards something that I felt I could really sink my teeth into. And I think when we first started working together, one of the first exercises you had me do was draw a picture of, my career, my life. And it was this whole thing. I had a river going through mountains and jungles, and I had this whole metaphor about my life. But what you helped me see through that, it was a really powerful first exercise, was that a lot of that change has come with like really interesting experiences, really great stories. I mean, one thing I haven't mentioned here, I was a kindergarten teacher in South Korea for a while. I've been on Ebola trainings on military bases. I've done all sorts of things, and it's really added to the texture of my life. So trying to just seek stability was not a great something that would have taken away from a lot of the experience I've had. And so that's where I've been trying to shift my perspective to just be more open to whatever change or possibilities may come along. Because had you asked 18-year-old Shelby what she wanted to do, she would not have predicted any of the things beyond my first job. And so that's why I don't know what I'll do in 10 years, because it will probably be for an organization that doesn't even exist right now. And
Mm,
so, yeah, I think that's been a hard won lesson out of my career to date.
yeah, it's a tough one. It's a tough one to learn. I think that's what I'm kind of sitting with at the moment. Is just, yeah, every day is change. We all change. The world changes. Nature changes. The world's
Yeah,
constantly changing. And we sit here desperate for, as you say, stability and security and for things not to change. And sometimes it's all we can do is go, oh, well, that's just never going to happen, and
yeah,
just try and roll with it as much as possible. Surrender to constant change almost.
which is so hard. I mean,
Yeah.
talking about it, I probably sound like it's been much easier than it has. I've really wrestled with the lack of certainty and with change. It's been very difficult at times. I think I now am finally able to like see the benefits of it and be more accepting of it. But it hasn't been easy to get to that perspective for me because of that like desire to grip on and try
Yeah.
to control things. But as I said, it's like for me, there have been so many upsides. So even for someone who's trying to switch maybe once or in a more clear or linear way, like the stuff that's difficult about it will wind up being the stories you tell, and will be some of what makes it feel worth it. And so it can be so hard to feel that in the moment. But afterwards, I think because I've done it so many times, I've been able to see that it's a pattern, rather than just an anomaly of that one thing I did was really hard. I'm like, okay, it was really hard, but there were all these upsides to it as well. Um, as I said, hard won lessons, but I do
Yeah.
appreciate it.
Yes. Well, they're often the most impactful, aren't they?
Yeah.
The hard lessons. Um, okay, and then just finally, having talked it all through, any other sort of nuggets of advice you would give to other prospective career, not necessarily changers, maybe shifters, transitioners? Yeah,
I do it.
yeah,
Like, I think it can be like a pebble in your shoe. You start to get that feeling and those niggles to want to make a change, and you can sit on it for years. I've done it. I've sat on it for years. And in the end, you probably will make a change. And so it's one of those of like, yes, it can be scary to change. There can be a lot of work and uncertainty and things that goes into it. But I think if there's something that you feel compelling yourself towards doing something differently, try it. And if it doesn't work, you'll try something else. I say this having just moved myself and my dog all the way across the world and then all the way back because it just wasn't right. And obviously, I don't have some of the ties or dependencies that would have made that more difficult, but also like sometimes you don't know until you do something. And so I think that would be my biggest advice. Like if you feel you want to go in a different direction, just try it. And if nothing else, you'll learn from it. And then
yeah,
maybe be
yeah,
happier back where you wind up if you come back to the same place.
yeah. Well, I love that image of the stone in the shoe.
Yeah. Yeah,
That's
it's
so
there. You
true.
can't ignore it,
Yeah,
you know?
yeah, yeah. And just to take that stone out, it's just, God, yeah, life changing in a
Yeah.
way.
But it could just
Um,
be a stone, right? It doesn't have to be, I didn't go from being a consultant to a baker. And, some people that is the change they need. I didn't need something that was that drastic either. It was similar.
yeah,
So,
and well, I remember you saying when I asked you to come on to here that you were a bit worried of, I haven't done something completely different. I was like, well, no, that's precisely why
mm,
I think it would be great to have that conversation. Actually, the previous episode with Hannah was a little bit similar. And I said it in the last one. I think it's important that people realize, as you say, it doesn't always have to be something drastic. A lot of people want it to be, and
yeah,
that's great. But for some people, they don't even let themselves think about doing something a little bit different because they think it has to be
yeah,
something massive. So no, it's good to hear that. Yeah, just little tweaks along the way can be helpful,
yeah.
and just to make the walking a bit more comfortable for
Yes,
sure.
exactly.
No
Along that journey.
niggling pebbles. Yeah. Okay. And then just lastly, have you come across any sort of resources or websites or articles or networks that have been really helpful for you that people could check out, or is it purely been those connections?
Oh, anyone who knows me knows I do all of my research and I listen to all the podcasts and I read all the books and all these things. I mean, What Color is My Parachute was a
Mm-hmm.
book I'm sure you're familiar with that before I found you, I had worked my way through that, which is a similar structure, I suppose, to a coaching structure, but it helped me think about things. It didn't help me feel some of it very well. So that's why I wanted to work with a coach, was to have that personal interaction where I was needing to explain myself and actually feel the things we were talking about. But I think it is a helpful first resource or anything similar to that that's asking you to look at different aspects of what you do, what you want to do, what your values are. Um, Yeah, that's one resource. I mean, the network thing, it can't be overstated. I don't like mingling with strangers. I find that really difficult. So I'm not saying this as someone who finds networking really easy, but networking doesn't have to be going to, yeah, the big event. It can be posting on LinkedIn saying, "Hey, I'm changing work, I'm looking for jobs that fit XYZ criteria. Let me know if you hear of anything. You'd be surprised how many people will come back with suggestions that you would never have thought of, or it could be as simple as meet this person who you would be interested in talking to. And so go have that coffee, even if you don't know what you'll get out of it. Those have been, as I said, the job I have now, I would never have come across had I not had lunch with someone that someone else in my network introduced me to, saying, I think this organization could be a good fit. So you just don't know what you'll get out of it. But especially when you're changing, it can be so valuable in connecting you to things outside of what you're already doing, which you've decided you don't want to do.
Yeah, for sure. Because otherwise, you just end up seeing the same things, and
Yeah.
then if none of that's inspiring, then you end up just feeling a bit stuck. But yeah, you're right. It doesn't have to be going to these grim networking events where you're stood there and you don't know who to talk to. It can just be a virtual catch up or a quick cup of coffee or
Yeah.
whatever, really. It can be one to one and quite personal, and start with people you know and sort of work out from there. Yeah, a much more accessible way of doing it, for sure.
And it's not always about getting a job. You don't necessarily have a networking coffee and they say, here's a job for you, but they give you insights that then help you find your way to those
Yeah,
jobs. And that
yeah,
can make all the difference.
yeah. Like little breadcrumbs.
Exactly. Yeah.
Cool. Okay, Shelby. Well, thank you so much. That was been really helpful and really interesting to hear all about, yeah, where you've been and where you might go next. And yeah, I just really appreciate your time and your openness and honesty about, yeah, how
Oh,
things
thank
have
you.
been for you and the future. So all the best.
Thank you
And
very much.
are you happy for people to reach out to you on LinkedIn if they just want to
Yeah, of
chat to you
course.
a little
Of
bit
course.
more about what you do? So yeah, all the best and thanks again. Hopefully speak to you soon.
Yes, thank you. And thank you for your help along the way. I mean, it really has been invaluable in helping me gain some of the confidence to do what I'm doing now, which is embracing more of that uncertainty. So, yeah, thank you.
Oh, you're very welcome. Well, it was a real pleasure and I miss our sessions. So
Yeah, me
I'm
too.
glad that we were able to catch up.
I
All
know,
right
it's
then,
great.
speak soon.
Thanks,
Yeah.
you too.
Bye.
Bye.